You're always emitting information. Everything physical is always emitting information. If you're animated with life, you're emitting energy and information. So what most people do is they say, I want the new house, the new car, the new relationship, I want a big bank account, I want my private jet, they do all that stuff. And then they visualize that, but when they visualize it, they never get in touch with how it would feel if it happened. In fact, they're hypnotized and conditioned into feeling the emotion when it happens. So they may do a little meditation or a little whatever, and they open their eyes and their senses say it's not there. So what do? They experience more lack, more separation. So when you're feeling lack and separation, you try harder. And now they try matter to matter to try to produce the outcome because they're feeling separate from their future. So then thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings produce a magnetic charge in the quantum field. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts electromagnetic energy that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the experience back to you. So then if the person is living in anger, impatience, resentment, frustration, and they're holding the intention of their future, that's mind and body in opposition. There's no vibrational match between anything in their future because they're saying, why hasn't it happened? And they're waiting for their healing to begin so that they feel gratitude. They're waiting for their success to feel abundant or empowerment. They're waiting for their new relationship to feel love. Well, that's the old model of reality of cause and effect, Newtonian physics, waiting for something outside to change how we feel inside. And if you're living in that lack and you consciously or unconsciously know that you're creating your future, you're creating more lack. And if you're reacting to the people and conditions in your life that are all known to you, then your thoughts and feelings are equal to everything that you know. You keep creating the same life. So then, if you have to truly change, then close your eyes, disconnect from the environment, sit your body down, don't get up and do anything. Don't be in the program of the future, the past, and relax into the present moment. And now, teach your body emotionally what that future feels like before it happened. Now why? Well, the stronger the emotion you feel from the future you're creating, the more you're going to pay attention to the pictures in your mind. And you're going to begin to remember your future. And biologically, it's the same as remembering your past. So then you have to stay in the feeling of that future in order for you to be aligned to that destiny.
If you are what you think about, then you have to start getting real careful about what you think about. Now you have to start this with being cautious about every conversation that you have with your friends, with your relatives, with your mother, with your husband, with your children, that focuses on what's missing in your life. Because if you want to attract something into your life, something good, something grand, something godlike, something prosperous, something of well-being, health, whatever it might be, if you want to attract that into your life, but you're talking about what's missing and thinking about what's missing, and you understand that what you think about is what expands, you will continue to expand more of what's missing, and you'll continue to attract what's missing in your life. I never talk about what's missing in my life. I only put my attention on what I intend to create. And I have shifted it. And I learned this lesson a long time ago, but the place that it probably expresses it better than any is Esther and Jerry Hicks' book, Ask and It Is Given. The teachings of Abraham is called Learning to Manifest Your Desires. Have more than anything, I think they're the greatest, among the really greatest teachings on the planet today. And I know Esther and Jerry, I know them well, I've been with them on many occasions. It's about practicing this idea of not putting your thoughts on what is missing and shifting it to, it's on its way. It's on its way. It's on its way. 4 words, just get them tattooed someplace inside of you. Whatever it is that you would like to attract into your life, know that it's on its way. And I want to say to you that as you begin to get your thoughts more harmonized with Tao thinking, that is, with the thinking of the source, the thinking of God, that which always has been, that which does nothing but leaves nothing undone. As you begin to more and more harmonize in this way, what happens is that you start elevating your thoughts so that the habit of how you think becomes more harmonized. Rather than a polarity with what you want to attract, it becomes harmonized with it, and it becomes your natural way of how you think all the time. And you start then beginning to teach your children the same way of thinking. So you just catch them when they start saying things like, oh, with my luck it won't work out. Why have any of us ever learned to say, with my luck, and having it mean things aren't going to work out? Why wouldn't you say, and just have it as your habit, with my luck, it'll probably show up faster than it normally does? Why not have that kind of a way? Because here's what happens. As you begin to shift the way that you think and have an anticipation that this thing is going to work out for you, you can only act upon your thoughts. And as you get these higher and higher thoughts, what happens is that the thought is now more aligned with what it is you want to attract, and then you start acting upon that thought. And as you start acting upon the thought that it will work out, that it's probably on its way, you start to see how this whole system all works. In other words, call it the universe, whatever you want, begins to conspire with you. It begins to act almost where you suddenly become a collaborator with fate. And instead of fate being something that just might or might not happen to you, you're in collaboration with what it is that you want to attract. I mean, ask any physician, there's physicians here today, ask them about something called the will to live. Ask them about somebody who's going in for a corneal transplant and thinks that I'm going to see when this thing is done, rather than someone who thinks it probably won't work out. And which one would they rather work with? What is this thing called the will to live? What is this thing, this inner kind of thing that says, I refuse to allow myself to think? I say to my mother, who's 90 years old, almost 91 years old. I was with her for the last 5 days, every day, all morning long with her. And she's been going through some difficulties and so on. Most of you saw her on the PBS show, if you saw The Inspiration. She has always said to me how she was going to die. She said it to me when she was 60. What her death was going to look like, when she was going to die in her sleep, and it was going to be, it was going to be a peaceful thing, and she was going to do it when she was ready. When she was ready, she would leave, and she would know when it was time. And she says, and don't think it's time. I said, well, you got a hangnail there. Maybe we should just move on with it. And she said, no, I'll tell you when I'm ready. But she has always said, I will never allow Alzheimer's into my life. She's always said that is not something. She'll say things like, well, I can't remember this name quite as well as I did before, but that concept of all, it's just not anything that I've ever allowed myself to think is a possibility. And I said to her, well, what if you're wrong? She'll say, well, who'll know the difference? And they've done research on this, in studies on gerontology, where what does your life look like from 60 plus versus what does your life look like below, from 60 down to into your 20s? That people who live a dynamic life into their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, people who feel strong, who don't feel that getting older means that I have to in any way decline any place, physically or mentally. Getting older has nothing to do with the concept of declining. That when people are in their 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and this is their perception of what their life is going to be like when they're in their 60s, that those people have a much greater chance of not attracting the kinds of diseases that are so much age-related as do people who think of old as infirm and declining throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. That you change the way you believe about that and you say declining is not a possibility. I don't think about what's missing. You don't put your attention on what's missing. You don't tell other people about what's missing. And you don't tell other people about what you can't do and what isn't working and how terrible the world is. And the Tao teaches so much of it was written for leaders, people in positions of power. But I've translated all of that into your own level of leadership. And the great leaders are the ones who eschew violence. You have got to get yourself to a place where you don't allow yourself to have violent thoughts come into your consciousness. That means you got to watch the movies you're watching. That means the games that your children are playing, video games, have got to be monitored and removed when they have violence built into them. It means that you don't watch the news and you don't read the stories endlessly reaffirming what a terrible place this world is. It is not a terrible place. It's a perfect place. It's a beautiful place. There are just some leaders who are connected to Tao and others who are not. And we can create the kind of world that we want to create when enough of us begin to say, not part of my consciousness. Nope, I don't buy gossip. No, I don't buy violence. No, I don't have anything to do with that. And you just turn the channel, you turn it off. I pick up a Time magazine when I get on a flight and I go through and I say, I won't read the stories that involve killing. I won't read this. I don't need to hear any more about any more people blowing themselves up. I don't need to continue to have that as a part of my consciousness because I want to be someone who radiates out God-realized thinking. That's what I want to do. And I can't do that if I'm constantly being imbued with that. So I just go through the pages, page. And usually I say, oh, just threw away another $4.95. There's nothing in it to read. Every once in a while, good story about maybe Tiger Woods or something. But by and large, there's not much in there. And you don't have to fill yourself with that kind of energy. So you don't put your thoughts on what's missing. You don't put your thoughts on what always has been. You don't put your thoughts on what others want for you, unless you want more of what others want for you to continue to show up into your life. So that if you're having conflicts with anybody that's out there, you don't have to put your attention on any thought that is out of harmony with the relationship that you would like to have. It doesn't have to be. You can have a love story replace a hate story by just changing your thoughts in any moment of your life. As you'll see, some of you will see it this afternoon, as Katie works with some of you and does the work and teaches you to ask yourself these questions about how can you be sure? How can you be sure that that thought is true? Why not have a love relationship with your ex-husband or your ex-wife? Why not have a love relationship with your in-laws? Why not? Why not have it with everyone on the planet? Why not? Indeed, why not?
Now, your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a reflection of your external environment. It's an artifact of all the things you've learned and experienced to date. Feelings and emotions are the end product of past experiences. And if you're feeling the same way every single day, it means two things. Number one, nothing new is happening in your life. And if those emotions are driving certain thoughts, and those thoughts then are creating the same emotions, then your thinking equal to your emotional state means you're thinking in the past. And if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, as long as you're thinking equal to your familiar emotions, you keep reaffirming the same past experiences in your life over and over again. Our research shows without a doubt in the last 3 years that when students of our work combine a clear intention, now intention is a vision, a potential that already exists in the quantum field that you get to select. And when you ask yourself a question like, what would it be like to be healthy? What would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to be free or to be in love? The moment you ask that creative question, a part of your brain called the frontal lobe turns on. That's the crowning achievement of a human being. Once that area of the brain turns on, it's like a great symphony leader. It looks out of the landscape of the entire brain, and it begins to randomly select different networks of neurons that are connected to the things you've learned in your life or the experiences you had. And it begins to seamlessly paste them together to create an ideal, a vision, or an internal representation. That is a potential experience that's awaiting you. But it's not enough to just have the mind involved. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And how you think and how you feel creates a state of being. Once you can begin to emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest, when you combine that clear intention with an elevated emotion, the freedom, the joy, the inspiration, the genuine love that you feel or gratitude from that experience, the moment you do that, your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's living in that future reality in the present moment. Now you're moving into a new state of being, into a new personality. And a new personality creates a new personal reality. The research that we've done shows that when we teach people how to regulate their internal states, to begin to create more coherence in their brain, and to generate elevated emotions like joy and gratitude and inspiration, that not only does the brain become coherent, but so does the heart. And when the brain is coherent, the heart is coherent. When the heart is coherent, the brain is coherent. And so why don't we live by these states on a daily basis? Primarily because the majority of the time that we live in our waking state of consciousness, 70% of the time, you and I are living by the hormones of stress. And living in stress is living in survival. And when you're living in survival, the very chemicals of survival cause you to function as materialist, defining your reality with your senses. You pay attention to objects and things and people. You begin to believe that your outer world is more real than your inner world.
It may seem incredible, but it is true. The world in which we live is a world of imagination. In fact, life itself is an activity of imagining. All that we behold, though it appears without, it is within, in our imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. Nothing appears or continues in being by a power of its own. Events happen because comparatively stable imaginal activities created them, and they continue in being only as long as they receive such support. Therefore, the secret of imagining is the greatest of all problems, to the solution of which everyone should aspire. For supreme power, supreme wisdom, and supreme joy lie in the solution of this great mystery. When man solves the mystery of imagining, he will have discovered the secret of causation, and that is, imagining creates reality. Divine imagining and human imagining are not two powers at all, but one. The valid distinction which exists between them lies not in the substance with which they operate, but in the degree of intensity of the operant power itself. Acting at high tension, an imaginal act is an immediate objective fact. Keyed low, an imaginal act is realized in a time process. Human history, with its forms of governments, its revolutions, its wars, and in fact the rise and fall of nations, could be written in terms of the imaginal activities of men and women. All imaginative men and women are forever casting forth enchantments, and all passive men and women who have no powerful imaginative lives are continually passing under the spell of their power. If imagination is the only thing that acts or is in existing beings or men, as Blake believed, then we should never be certain that it was not some woman treading in the winepress who began that subtle change in men's minds, or that the passion because of which the earth has been drenched in blood did not begin in the imagination of some shepherd boy, lighting up his eye for a moment before it ran upon its way. The future is the imaginal activity of man in its creative march. Imagining is the creative power, not only of the poet, the artist, the actor, and orator, but of the scientist, the inventor, the merchant, and the artisan. Its abuse in unrestrained, unlovely image-making is obvious, but its abuse in undue repression breeds a sterility which robs a man of actual wealth of experience. Imagining novel solutions to ever more complex problems is far more noble than to restrain or kill out desire. Life is the continuing solution of a continuously synthetic problem. Imagining creates events. Our world, created out of men's imagining, comprise unnumbered warring beliefs. Therefore, there can never be a perfectly stable or static state. Today's events are bound to disturb our yesterday's established order. Imaginative men and women invariably unsettle a pre-existing peace of mind. Hold fast to your ideal in your imagination. Nothing can take it from you but your failure to persist in imagining the ideal realized. Imagine only such states that are of value or promise well. To attempt to change circumstances before we change our imaginal activity is to struggle against the very nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an imaginal change. Everything we do, unaccompanied by an imaginal change, is but futile readjustment of surfaces. Imagining the wish fulfilled brings about a union with that state. And during that union, we behave in keeping with our imaginal change. This shows us that an imaginal change will result in a change of behavior. However, our ordinary imaginal alterations, as we pass from one state to another, are not transformations, because each of them is so rapidly succeeded by another in the reverse direction. But whenever one state grows so stable as to become our constant mood, our habitual attitude, then that habitual state defines our character and is a true transformation. Now let me call your attention to the design on the cover of this record. You will notice a man sitting on a park bench, imagining himself to be in a home. This is the secret of those who lie in bed awake while they dream things true. They know how to live in their own dream house until, in fact, they do. Man, through the medium of a controlled waking dream, can predetermine his future. That imaginal activity of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled leads man across a bridge of incident to the fulfillment of the dream. If we live in the dream, thinking from it and not of it, then the creative power of imagining will answer our adventurous fancy, and the wish fulfilled will break in upon us and take us unawares. Man is all imagination. Therefore, man must be where he is in imagination, for his imagination is himself. To realize that imagination is not something tied to the senses or enclosed within the spatial boundary of the body is most important. Although man moves about in space by movement of his physical body, he need not be so restricted. He can move by a change in what he is aware of. However real the scene on which sight rests, man can gaze on one never before witnessed. He can always remove the mountain if it upsets his concept of what life ought to be. This ability to mentally move from things as they are to things as they ought to be is one of the most important discoveries that man can make. It reveals man as a center of imagining, with powers of intervention which enable him to alter the course of observed events, moving from success to success through a series of mental transformations of nature, of others, and himself. How does he do it? Self-abandonment. That is the secret. He has to abandon himself mentally to his wish fulfilled, in his love for that state, and in so doing live in the new state and no more in the